This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. Families of two murdered First Nations women have been pleading for a search for their loved ones' remains for more than a year now. Today, a new report detailing what's needed to search a Manitoba landfill for their bodies has been sent to all three levels of government. Now, that's according to Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Cathy Merrick. Merrick, alongside family members of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, held a news conference this afternoon. CBC's Alana Cole reports.
No more delays. That was the message from Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs Grand Chief Cathy Merrick at a news conference this afternoon. There, with family members of Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron, Merrick said they've completed a new report, a further study into what is needed to search the Prairie Green landfill for the remains of the two women. And now they want funding to get started, and they want the province to move quickly on the permits they need.
There's no room for compromise here. We insist on a meeting involving all three levels of government, and we won't accept anything less.
More than a year ago, police announced Jeremy Skibicki had been charged with first-degree murder in the deaths of Myron Harris and an unknown woman given the name Buffalo Woman. He'd already been charged for Rebecca Contois' death. Some of her remains were found at the Brady Road landfill. Police have said they believe Myron and Harris's bodies are in the Prairie Green landfill north of Winnipeg. Today, Donna Bartlett, the grandmother of Myron, says she just wants to bring her home.
Her children are hurting to this day because they know their mom's not at the gravesite we have for her. That is my main purpose. Please get the landfill searched.
This is the second study detailing what will go into a search. Last year, a feasibility study looked at how a search could be done safely. Today, ISM Masqua, the organization hired as technical experts, says it could take 6 months to hire staff, buy equipment, and build a facility. And there's no way to know exactly how long a search would take.
And the search could be completed quite quickly, or it could take out to 1 or 3 years.
The initial feasibility study estimates the cost between $84 million and $184 million. Morgan Harris's cousin Melissa Robinson says that shouldn't be a factor.
If it was your loved one, would you want a dollar amount on it? No, you'd want them, right? You'd want their remains, you'd want to be able to bury them and lay them to rest properly.
Today, Robinson also made a point to call on Mayor Scott Gillingham to help with the efforts. She wants the city to donate land for the facility needed to conduct a search. AMC says they aren't sharing this new report publicly. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
In a statement released late this afternoon, a spokesperson for the mayor said he has asked the public service to review what land might be available for an off-site search facility. The province, meanwhile, says it is reviewing the new report and it is reiterating its commitment to searching the landfill. A Winnipeg restaurant owner is dead, and a suspect is in custody tonight after a fight outside the business. It happened yesterday at Cork and Flame in St. James. People are remembering the man who died while police await answers from an autopsy. CBC's Josh Crabb reports.
51-year-old Kyriakis Foijakis is being remembered by family, friends and colleagues. He's the owner of this Portage Avenue restaurant called Cork and Flame. Constable Jason Mikulishin says Winnipeg police were called here Wednesday night around 5:30 for a fight between two men.
By the time we attended, there was a male identified as requiring medical attention. Whether that was directly related to the altercation or whether there was other factors at play, that is a big part of our investigation at this point.
Officers say Foijakis had critical injuries and was taken to hospital where he died. In a Facebook post, his brother Mike Foijakis says, "With sadness and broken hearts, we regret to announce the tragic passing of our younger brother Kyriakis." Mikulishin wouldn't elaborate on his injuries or what led to the fight in the first place. He says officers did take a suspect into custody who was found in the area a short time later. Investigators are waiting on autopsy results to determine the cause of death.
and ultimately any potential charges, those results are going to assist us with that as well.
Sean Jeffrey with the Manitoba Restaurant and Food Services Association is saddened by Wojciech's death.
I've been in his restaurant many times and seen many times, and talked to his guests. Just a heartbeat of that restaurant.
Cork and Flame opened just before the pandemic. Details of the circumstances behind the fight outside the restaurant are still unclear, but Jeffrey says restaurant owners have long been concerned over what they see as an uptick in violence and crime.
Violent incidents like this are happening in our industry more and more, and it's just it's a sad day in our industry. We lost an amazing person today.
Police are describing what happened as a physical altercation. At this point, it's being treated as a death investigation. Investigators have spoken to the suspect and witnesses and want to speak with anyone else with information or who saw what happened. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A 1-year-old boy and his 29-year-old father were both killed in a highway collision on Highway 6 this morning. Stonewall RCMP say they were in a southbound car that went into an oncoming lane and collided with a semi-truck. It happened in the RM of Woodlands. The driver of the semi was taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Police say icy driving conditions were a factor in the crash. The hockey world is reeling after a series of recent developments. First, multiple NHL teams announced that some players were leaving indefinitely. Then yesterday, the Globe and Mail reported 5 former World Junior players were told to surrender themselves to police in London, Ontario, to face sexual assault charges. CBC News has not independently verified that reporting. Karen Pauls has the story.
A proud moment when Canada won the 2018 World Junior Championships. But since then, revelations of a $3.5 million out-of-court settlement by Hockey Canada after a young woman alleged she was sexually assaulted by 8 members of that team. Police have opened, closed, and reopened that investigation. And now the Globe and Mail is reporting that 5 players have been asked to surrender themselves to face sexual assault charges. CBC News has not independently verified the report.
These are individuals who they know who they are, and the warrant's not going to go away. They're going to be arrested. Either they can walk into the police station and do that, or ultimately the police will come and find them.
This former assistant Crown prosecutor, now a defense lawyer, is not connected to this case.
And they'll be read their rights to counsel, given their caution, allowed the opportunity to speak with a lawyer, and then I would imagine released with a court date and some conditions at that point in time.
5 members of the 2018 World Junior team have taken leaves of absence from their professional teams in the last week, but no evidence has been made public linking them to any of the allegations, and the teams aren't saying much.
We will respond appropriately when the outcomes of the investigations are made public. The NHL has been very clear that teams should refer all investigation-related questions to them.
The NHL is doing its own investigation, but hasn't yet released its findings, leaving teams and players under a cloud.
There's a lot of pressure on the National Hockey League to condemn this type of event, but it hasn't been proven yet. And to a certain degree, they've been condemned. They are not playing hockey and won't be playing hockey until this case is resolved, and unless it's resolved in their favor.
And that could be years. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Dozens of people gathered at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights last night for a discussion about stories of gender-based violence by Hamas in Israel on October 7th last year. The event, called Hear Our Voices, was hosted and streamed online by Jewish Child and Family Services and moderated by Gail Asper, who chairs the Asper Foundation. Ayelet Razenbetor is part of a group of Israeli experts who are going over evidence and testimony of sexual violence from hostages, first responders, and victims who say this happened during the attack.
It's hard to listen to what I have to say, but this is what happened, and it's only the beginning. We're only in the beginning of this story and in investigating the story, and this is what happened, and people need to know. That's for the first thing, and to take a stand and to take action. Razine
Betor says she's sharing her work so people can bear witness to what happened. She hopes the international community condemns Hamas and sexual violence. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham says the city is reviewing security measures in the wake of a disturbing incident in Edmonton. On Tuesday, a heavily armed man fired shots and threw a Molotov cocktail inside Edmonton City Hall. No one was injured. A suspect was arrested. Gillingham says he reached out to Edmonton's mayor to offer support. He also says the city's chief administrative officer is reviewing Winnipeg City security policies. A report is expected to be presented to councillors tomorrow. The city is also in the process of hiring someone to coordinate security at all city-owned buildings. What is the minimum amount of money a family in Winnipeg needs to support itself? That's a question city councillors are being asked to consider as part of a push for a living wage for city workers. But as CBC's Cameron McLean reports, that effort won't be getting any support from the city's mayor.
$19.21 an hour. That's one estimate of how much it costs to support a family in Winnipeg. The Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives created the living wage framework. This is the minimum wage for a family of 4 with 2 young children to pay for necessities. And right now, researcher Niall Harney says there are workers at the city making less than that.
Last night, I took a look through QP 500's collective agreement and found 13 positions at the City of Winnipeg that offered less than a living wage. These positions were concentrated in library, recreation, and 311 services.
He says the living wage covers costs for shelter, food, transportation, and childcare. It doesn't include costs for debt repayment, retirement savings, or caring for a loved one. Councillor Cindy Gilroy raised a motion to make the living wage the standard for all city employees and contractors.
Making sure that we have a fair living wage, making sure that we have good retention, good working jobs that are good for Winnipeggers is also good for the economy.
At one time, the city paid significantly more than the provincial minimum wage, but that advantage has eroded over time. 4 years ago, the City of Winnipeg's lowest paid workers made $15 an hour. At that time, the provincial minimum wage was $11.90. Since then, Manitoba raised its minimum wage, reaching $15.30 as of last year, on par with the city's lowest paid workers. Council didn't vote on the motion today, instead sending it back to the Executive Policy Committee for further discussion. But Mayor Scott Gillingham says he doesn't support the motion.
Because when you raise the base rate of any wage in the City of Winnipeg, all the other wage classifications will want and will seek a bump accordingly.
Gillingham says wages should be determined through collective bargaining. The motion will come back for debate at the Executive Policy Committee in February. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
United Airlines is bringing back flights between Winnipeg and Denver and Winnipeg and Chicago. These routes were halted at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, United says it plans to resume daily non-stop service between Winnipeg and those 2 U.S. hubs. Michelle Rosé at the Winnipeg Airports Authority says this is big news, not just for vacationers, I should say, but also for local businesses.
We've heard a lot over the last couple of years, ever since the routes were put on pause, that a lot of businesses, these 2 routes meant a lot to them because they do have dealings with other companies or so forth in Chicago or Denver. So this strengthens our community's connectivity.
Today's announcement means the Winnipeg Airport will have 6 direct year-round routes to U.S. destinations. The others are Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and Atlanta. The flights to Denver and Chicago begin May 23rd. A Manitoba dentist is being disciplined for submitting false billing information about a patient's dental care. An insurance company complained, leading to a disciplinary hearing. The hearing heard that the dentist completed dental work in one policy year and then billed it to the insurer in the following year. The dentist admitted she gave false invoices to the insurer. She also admitted to misleading the investigator who was looking into the case for the regulatory body. Dr. Danielle Job was reprimanded, fined $10,000, and required to pay costs of the hearing under the Manitoba Dental Association. What a day this has been for kids in Bloodvein First Nation. Miskusipi School is lucky enough to have an indoor rock climbing wall in its gymnasium. So today, Bloodvein hosted students from other First Nations, grades 5 to 8, for their first annual indoor rock climbing championship. Charles Cochran of the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre was there.
It was awesome. The children, the kids that came from outside communities, well, I think they were blown away. Oh man, the kids were just so amazed. It was a lot of fun. Even us as observers was so much fun. This being its first annual event, we are looking at certainly doing this again. And I think once people start to find out about it, you know, we'll get more people out to come out for it. More schools, and who's to say, maybe other schools build something like this, go to other schools. It was so good.
So good. Well, if you would rather play outside, you may be overjoyed hearing these words. The words are skaters can finally head out on the Nestawaya River Trail. A section at the Forks Port is now open. It's been a struggle this year with the temperature fluctuating between too mild and very cold. A gush of water up from the U.S. recently didn't help. Sarah Stasiuk is president and CEO of the Forks. She says this is the latest the river trail has ever opened.
It's an amenity that sees so much love for commuters, newcomers to Winnipeg, from tourists, and of course, most of all, locals. And building and maintaining this major asset for our communities is something that we take real pride in. Being down here gives you a rare view and perspective of our city.
Rink is the only section that is open so far. The Fork says it will open more sections and other conditions permit. It will unveil 6 new warming huts from this year's design competition tomorrow. Our weather specialist Riley Lachuk joins us now with the all-important what's it going to do to the skating trail forecast?
Yeah, we are looking at an extended period, Janet, of some very warm temperatures continuing. So maybe not as conducive to freezing water as we'd like, but it will be pretty nice outside come the weekend. Good time to remind you of ice thickness and how important it is to make sure you check the ice before you head out. So here's our ice thickness guide that I'm going to show you tonight. So the ice, if you check it, less than 4 inches, I'd stay off it if I were you. That is not safe. You have to remember, just because it's ice on the surface, there's still a moving body of water underneath, whether you're at a lake or on a river or another body of water like that. 4 to 6 inches, good to go ice fishing for you and your pet. Taking the snowmobile out on the ice, need at least 6 inches of ice under you and at least 8, ideally up to a foot of ice if you're going to take your car, and even more if you're taking your truck on the ice. So keep that in mind if you're planning to do any ice fishing through the winter. And in the coming days, we're really looking at some warm temperatures that will be good to get out on the ice, if that's your thing. Looking at the upper level atmosphere, you can see that as we get into the day on Friday, by the time we get to supper time tomorrow, still in this warm pocket of air, but watch what happens as we get into the weekend. You can see these brighter colors even extending up into the prairies, a bit of a ridge starting to form here, and that will allow some of that mild Pacific air to flow into Manitoba, really bringing us a warm up, especially as we get into the day Monday and Tuesday here. You can see most of Western Canada under a nice sunny sky and very warm conditions for this time of the year. So we're still under this gloomy gray mist, cloud, freezing drizzle, fog, and everything like that. Can't really see it on satellite radar right now, but we did have some freezing drizzle even in the last hour reported at the airport. So we're seeing some of that on and off as we get into the evening tonight once again. So looking at Futurecast, you can see as we get into the day on Friday, we do see some of that clearing starting already first thing in the morning in Westman, albeit there will be some visibility concerns. Likely to see some fog once again through southwestern Manitoba early tomorrow. But look what happens as we get to about the noon hour. You can see that clearing right on the edge of Winnipeg, which means we'll start to see a little bit of sunshine as we get through the day and through the afternoon on Friday. Sunnier skies on the way for this weekend. A little bit of a disturbance making its way across northern Manitoba as we get into Saturday and into Sunday. And even maybe a risk, a very slim risk of some precipitation coming into southwestern Manitoba into the day on Saturday and Sunday. -3 in Winnipeg right now. Winds really not doing much out there. We're going to see winds still fairly light as we get through the night, but visibility will be a concern because we do have, as you can see, starting the day tomorrow, a good chance of some fog through the southwest once again. Not as much through the Red River Valley, but we could see some fog patches into the morning tomorrow. -5 tonight. Possibility of some fog patches, and then we're looking at -3 on the way for Saturday with a sunny sky. -1 for Sunday, Janet, and that is not a typo. That's a +3 on the way for next Monday under a sunny sky.
In January.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
odd. Thanks very much, Riley. We'll check in with you a little bit later. A new study says parents should park the helicopter. No helicopter parenting. It says parents should encourage their kids to take risks and engage in rough and tumble outdoor activities to help promote physical and mental health, even if that means breaking out the Band-Aids once in a while. Christine Burak explains.
For parents, this advice may be eye-opening. After spending decades supervising and trying to protect kids from any and all injuries, the Canadian Pediatric Society is telling doctors one way of dealing with rising obesity, anxiety, and behavioral issues is to get kids back outside and let them take risks while they're playing, even if that means falling down, even if that means getting hurt.
There is a balance between allowing kids to get out there, be autonomous, try new things, challenge themselves, and we know that there will be a risk of injury.
So what is risky play? Experts say it's things like playing at heights. That means climbing, jumping, balancing, playing at speed, biking at high speed, sliding and running. Now this one might irk some parents. Play involving tools, so supervised activities like using an axe, saw, or knife. So things like building a clubhouse or wood carving. Of course, this needs to be age appropriate, but the list also includes wrestling, play fighting, and allowing kids to explore.
You know, this isn't about letting a child run into a busy street or play unsupervised near rough water. You know, those are hazards.
She also points out there's a difference between risk and hazard. Risky play does not mean ignoring evidence-based safety measures like bike helmets, life jackets, and safety gates. It does not mean leaving kids unsupervised in potentially hazardous situations like busy roadways and rough waters. Doctors say this is about age-appropriate fun.
It's a shift from helicopter parenting, right? And over-parenting and over-scheduling. So I think it's healthier for kids. It's better to build resilience, belief in themselves and their abilities.
Experts say parents can also reframe the way they talk about risk with their kids. So next time you're at the playground, instead of saying, "Be careful, are you sure that's a good idea?" try saying, "Do you feel stable up there? What's your plan for getting down?" Experts insist instead of raising doubts and fears, parents can raise awareness and problem solve with their kids. Experts insist this isn't about moving away from safety. It's a shift towards making kids as safe as necessary. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
Carla Remnant's been counseling parents and children for decades here in Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us, Carla.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to the Canadian Pediatric Society trying to move parents away from over-parenting when children play?
Yeah, you know, I think encouraging children to do that messy play and that risky play is so incredibly important to their development, their brain development, their physical development. And I understand it's hard for parents. We want to keep our children safe. That's our #1 priority. But I think just letting them spread their wings a little bit can only benefit them in the future.
But what do you do if you're a parent and you are anxious about this?
You know, I think just trying little bits, maybe even coming to centers like we have here at South Winnipeg Family Information Center. We encourage messy play. We encourage kids to, you know, practice with scissors. We encourage them to run and get out of their comfort zones a little bit. So I think if parents aren't completely feeling comfortable at home, maybe they can reach out and find a family center in their area that maybe would be a safer, more comfortable environment to try those things out.
Because some people it could be a transition, hey? It could be, you know, okay, wait a minute, I'm supposed to keep my child really safe. I'm worried about all these external factors and them getting hurt, and now I'm supposed to just let them go. That could be a change for a lot of parents.
A huge change. And we see parents coming into our center that are facing those challenges. And I think during COVID that it got even more extreme because we did have to protect our children. We did have to keep them away and we did have to, you know, watch them more. I think that it's just going to be baby steps for the parents. The kids are ready to run and the kids are ready to try new things all the time. So I think if we can just do baby steps, you know, share in some of that risky play with your children so you can still be side by side, but climb those trees together and jump off that jungle gym together, you know.
That sounds like it might also be good advice if your child's a little bit nervous about climbing the tree, if they're not ready to run.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, our children look to us to have that support and that safety and to be their safe person. So if we're doing those things and we're modeling that behavior, I think children will follow suit. And even if they're a little nervous, a little scared, baby steps. I mean, we don't all learn at once. And once kids really realize that they have that freedom and they can let their bodies go and let their minds go, I think they'll jump right in.
Now, of course, the doctors are saying you should still wear bike helmets and still be careful around water, all those real safety things. But if a child does get hurt, say they fall and they've got a skinned knee, what's the best way to react?
I think the best way to react is just kind of mirror your child, you know, acknowledging that they're upset. Yes, that hurts, you know, but saying it's okay. Sometimes we fall down and we get hurt. And, you know, I'm here to help you get back up and try again.
Get back up and try again. Resilience, is that what we're building?
Absolutely. Resilience is huge. And I think that, you know, it helps our children in the now, whether they're 2, 3, 4, 5. But think of us as adults in those teenage years when they're at school and they're, you know, have more freedom. And as they become young adults, we all need resilience, especially going forward in a world that's a little different than it used to be.
Carla Remnant, thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Liberal MPs are standing by the Prime Minister after one of their own called for a leadership review before issuing a retraction. More on that after the break. The Liberal caucus gathered today in Ottawa ahead of the return of the House of Commons next week to talk strategy. Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
So we're all energized. Justin Trudeau hoping to start the new year with a show of solidarity in his caucus.
It's a great strength of this party that here in this room we can have deep and serious and difficult conversations.
One of those difficult conversations may be about Trudeau himself, after one Liberal MP publicly questioned his leadership.
It's all about your best before date. Sometimes a leader or a party tries to hang on to power too long.
The danger, Ken MacDonald said, could well be losing the next election.
You seem to suggest that there needs to be some sort of a shake-up, like maybe a leadership shake-up or something. Like there needs to be something.
Even a leadership review, right? Like
you want a leadership review?
A leadership review. Like normally, in most circumstances in politics, and especially in the federal government, if you go from a majority government to a minority government, there's supposed to be a leadership review.
Caucus colleagues are publicly standing behind Trudeau.
The reality is, if Canadians are going to choose for a new leader, who do you want as a new leader? Trudeau, okay, maybe you're not totally in love with the guy now, but I say he's way, way better than Poilievre, and I think he's actually a really good leader.
He's been very clear that he wants to be the one who leads us into the next election, and he has my full support.
Working together as a team is what Canadians expect of us, and leadership means supporting Canadians and having vision for the future.
After a conversation with his party whip yesterday, MacDonald has now walked back his comments, saying in a statement his intent was not to personally call for a leadership review, and he's not calling for one now. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Britain has walked away from trade talks with Canada. The sticking point is how much access United Kingdom producers should have to the Canadian cheese market. Today's development taps the brakes on a bilateral trade deal that's been several years in the making. After the UK's departure from the European Union, an interim agreement kept tariff-free British cheese on Canadian shelves for 3 years. That expired January 1st. A government spokesperson says the pause in the talks is disappointing, but Canada will not negotiate an agreement that is not good for Canadian business, farmers, and workers. The Hamas-run health ministry says Israeli fire has struck a crowd of people waiting for humanitarian aid in Gaza City. CBC's Caroline Bargut is tracking the latest developments.
Thousands of Palestinians run for their lives in Gaza City. Health officials say at least 20 people were killed and 150 injured at a United Nations compound that had been sheltering displaced Palestinians. The UN says Israeli tanks struck the building. Israel denies the claims, but says it's reviewing the incident. The wounded were taken to Al-Shifa, one of 7 barely functioning hospitals in the north.
I'm back in Al-Shifa, the largest hospital in Gaza, for the 3rd time this week, where it's still a case of absolute misery.
Sean Casey is the emergency medical team's coordinator for the World Health Organization in Gaza. He spent 5 weeks there last November and December.
It's hard to go into a hospital and see children on the floor bleeding and no health workers to care for them. To hear doctors crying out for a chest tube that isn't there, saying I could save this person, but I don't have the supplies that I need.
Bassem Shaheen was injured in a bombing in northern Gaza in early November. He waited 8 hours in hospital, bleeding until doctors were able to get to him. He says he arrived at the hospital and fainted and woke up the next day. He was then transferred to the European hospital in the south, where he remains today. The Red Cross says it is one of only 2 hospitals in Gaza still able to do advanced surgical and medical emergency services. Nearly 26,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th, and more than 64,000 have been injured in Israeli strikes on Gaza, according to the Hamas-run health ministry.
There is no way that WHO or any UN agency or any non-governmental organization can meet these needs under the circumstances that we're in now.
The WHO says only 7 of the 12 hospitals in southern Gaza are partially functioning, including this one in Han Yunis. But Palestinian medics say Israeli tanks are shelling targets around Nasser and Al Amal hospitals, cutting off access to patients needing medical care and trapping health officials, patients, and displaced people sheltering inside or nearby. Israel alleges Hamas uses hospitals as cover for bases, something both Hamas and medical staff deny. Caroline Bargood, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Colombia is declaring ongoing wildfires a natural disaster. At least 25 fires are burning. This month, firefighters have extinguished 200 others. Flames were visible this week from the capital. The disaster declaration will funnel more money to the battle against the fires. Colombia is in the middle of its dry season, one that this year's El Niño weather pattern is making worse. A study published yesterday said climate change is behind record drought across the Amazon region. Still ahead, giving new life to old artwork. How an Edmonton man turns thrift store paintings into updated pieces. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. You've heard the stories of people finding masterpiece paintings at a thrift store. But alas, most of the paintings you find there are not masterpieces. At least not yet. As Emily Fitzpatrick shows us, an Edmonton artist finds some could use creative touch-ups.
Landscapes, like seascapes, mountainscapes. I got portraits of cats. I got a whole clown series.
6,000 paintings, once piled high in this storage locker, now take up most of Josh Harnack's studio.
There's so much potential, especially with this mailbox opening up.
His hobby of breathing new life into thrift store paintings has reached a new level. Now, little by little, he's working his way through these pieces, collaborating with forgotten artists by putting his own spin on it.
It's kind of like when you're a kid and you're looking at clouds and you try to make shapes out of the clouds. I do the same thing, but with like a painting, where I just try to see the shapes and go, oh, that could be this or this could be that. And then I dive in.
They could have hung in dental offices or hotels, as most of the art was painted in Korea for mass production. But now, at the hands of Harnack, a branch has become a tentacle, a hat, a bird's nest.
Taking these paintings that have kind of had their heyday on people's walls, and now to give them a whole second life that they can maybe live on somebody's wall for another 30 or 40 or 50 years is really exciting.
This exercise in creativity, adding touches of surrealism to realism, has been invigorating.
I get a lot of joy out of trying to figure out how I can add something to the scene and to their lighting and composition, so it's kind of a seamless addition where you wouldn't notice it right away until you do that double take.
Harnack will be displaying some of the pieces at the Roxy Theatre, where he hopes they'll be snapped up, rehoming these landscapes to living rooms. Emily Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Edmonton.
Wow. We're not the only ones having a weirdly mild spell. Spain and Portugal are experiencing unseasonal warm weather in the middle of their winter as well. But their temperatures are hot enough for some people to head to the beach. Last year was Spain's second hottest on record, only surpassed by 2022, according to official data. Scientists are linking extreme weather events around the globe, including in southern Europe, to climate change. Several January records were broken across Spain yesterday as thermometers climbed to 28 degrees Celsius in some places. In neighboring Portugal, they're also feeling the heat much earlier than normal. Temperatures in central regions are expected to hit the mid-20s tomorrow. Well, thank goodness they don't have as many winter roads to maintain as we do here in Manitoba, because we need those roads to stay frozen.
And parts of the north are looking at some snow as
well,
we
that'll
get
help
through tonight into the day tomorrow. We can take a look at the forecast amounts for that snowfall as we take this out a couple of days here. You can see by the time we get into Saturday, so the first shot of snow comes tonight across Thompson, Norway House over to Gillam and the Shamattawa region. But by the time we get to supper time on Saturday, you can start to see a little bit more snow. 2 to 5 centimeters generally across northern Manitoba by the time we get into the weekend. So we'll keep an eye on that. Looking at current temperatures right now, -3 in both Morris and Steinbach, as well as at the airport. And in downtown Winnipeg, -3 in Eli and St. Laurent as well. -7 in Melita, -6 in Brandon at the moment, -1 in Fort Francis. Also seeing -6s in both Swan River and Roblin. And you can really see the dividing line between where that warmer air is here. Lynn Lake at -9 to Dooley Lake at -16 degrees. So you can see where that Arctic air is really starting to, well, still making its way into parts of Manitoba. So your forecast for tonight looks like this through northwestern Ontario, a risk of some freezing drizzle. Otherwise, we're looking at mainly cloudy skies, temperatures -3 and -4 through into the early morning hours. Tonight for southeastern Manitoba, -4 for both Emerson and Steinbach, -5 in Winnipeg. Risk to see some patchy fog as we get into the night tonight and especially into the early morning hours tomorrow. Otherwise, a risk of some freezing drizzle. Into southwestern Manitoba, -8 in Melita and Brandon. This is where we have the greatest risk of seeing some of that freezing drizzle into the night tonight, -7 in Swan River. And the north looking at a little bit of snow, a chance, a very slim chance of some flurries in Flin Flon. Otherwise, a chance of light snow and some periods of snow into northeastern Manitoba. Shamattawa tonight at -13 degrees. That tapers off to some light snow through the morning tomorrow, -2 in Shamattawa by the afternoon. -4 in Gillam and Flin Flon, and Some sun starting to poke out through the paw at -3 tomorrow. And that's what we're getting for the southwestern part of Manitoba. Once that fog dissipates into the morning, we're looking at temperatures around the freezing mark and yes, even some sunshine by the time we get into the afternoon, and we're going to see that a little bit later in the afternoon for the Red River Valley. So a sun-cloud mix tomorrow. More cloud than sun to start today, but we will start to see some of that sun through the day tomorrow. -2 in Winnipeg, -1 in Emerson, and into northwestern Ontario. Still getting some clearing as we get through the day tomorrow. 0 with a chance of flurries in Red Lake and -1 in Kenora. Your warm 7-day forecast, Janet, is coming up.
Thank you very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
The script that led to CBC's hit comedy Kim's Convenience was originally a play, and now it is once again in London. Reaction after the break. First it was a play, then it was a sitcom here on CBC. Now Kim's Convenience is back on stage in London, England. CBC's Abby Kuavasan reports.
I'm at the Park Theatre here in London on the set of Kim's Convenience that everyone, of course, knows as that successful Toronto Fringe stage play, which became a hit CBC series and ended up on Netflix finding a global audience. And now It's making its European premiere right here in the English capital. And this authentic set featuring all the classics, including Big Turk, O. Henry, Coffee Crisp, and of course, ketchup chips. Ketchup chips, which we do not have here in England, and certainly another Ontario convenience store staple, bagged milk, all 4 liters of it. Now, some of the fans that are coming to watch the show are Canadian. They're feeling homesick. Here's what they had to say.
It was fantastic. It was very emotional, and I think it was so on point. It's something that I think applies to a lot of different cultures when you're a second generation.
Yeah, I really loved it. Yeah, it was so funny. Had a little cry at some points. Yeah, I really liked it.
Esther Jahn, who played Janet in the original production in Toronto, is directing this show, and she says this story has a special place in her heart.
I think now that I'm older and that I now have a child, it just resonates so differently. It was about the story of immigrant children, but coming to the other side, seeing the whole world, and like I said, being a parent, I really so fully understand why Int said it was a love letter to his parents, because it has also taught me so much more understanding of where my parents came from, and also understanding, they're just human. So I think it's taught me to be a better parent, and it's also taught me to be a better daughter.
This production, which still has a couple of weeks left in its run, is already a massive success. Again, it's nearly sold out. Abby Koalasan, CBC News, London.
A scuba diver recently witnessed a very rare sight just off Vancouver Island. It was kind of a brutal confrontation between a hungry seal and a giant Pacific octopus. We have to warn you that the octopus did end up losing a tentacle. But luckily, their arms apparently grow back. So here's the video.
We decided to start heading back to shore, and then a seal just zipped by us. And we were like, oh, that's a pretty rare sight, right? We don't see seals quite often while we're scuba diving. So I used my light to sort of scan the horizon, and I saw this seal was sort of vertical. And it was kind of pulling at something off a rock. Normally seals will swim off, but it didn't really care about our presence. We realized that it was actually attacking a giant Pacific octopus. Normally those large octopus are hiding in crevices, but this one was just out in the open. So the seal, thought, hey, this would be a nice snack. The seal went up for, to catch its breath and came back down. So I guess the octopus thought, okay, this is my time to get away. So you can see it in the video. It actually swims right in front of us as the seal comes back down and chases it. And what octopus do is they release some ink to try to evade their predators, but the seal just you can see it kind of swimming through the ink and does find the octopus, and then they go through a bit of a battle there, and very exciting to watch. Our hearts were beating pretty quickly.
Personally, I'm glad the octopus will be okay because they're really cool to see underwater. Riley Lachuk with your 7-day forecast, and then your daily lift still to come.
All right, here's a look at your forecast as we get into the night tonight and into tomorrow morning. So dropping to -5 overnight with fog patches across southern Manitoba, risk of freezing drizzle really across from northwestern Ontario into the Westman region. So fairly widespread tonight. Waking up to -4 tomorrow morning. Watch for fog patches in the morning. On the way to a -2 tomorrow afternoon under cloudy sky with some sunny breaks through the afternoon, then a much sunnier weekend ahead. -3 for Saturday, -1 for Sunday, +3 on the way for Monday. Then we get a little bit of wind, +1 on the way for Tuesday, 2 degrees for Wednesday, and 0 once again on Thursday. And a lot more sun in this forecast than we've seen in the last few days. So we were talking earlier, Janet, in the show about letting kids be kids and play, even if it could get a little bit risky at times.
This kid in this story needs no encouragement. She is a Saskatchewan girl who's gearing up to go to the U.S. for the World BMX Championships.
And she's just 9 years old. CBC's Aishwarya Duda has our Daily Lift tonight.
Ariel Kelly grew up in the small town of Dana, about an hour's drive east of Saskatoon. These days, you can find her training hard in Edmonton for the BMX World Championships.
We are here at Riders Ready BMX Indoor BMX Track, and I'm here to practice for the Worlds in South Carolina.
Kelly's journey began with her grandpa, Lowell Ruda, who taught her how to ride her grandma's old pink bike. After that, he started coaching her, and soon she was hitting the tracks in Warman and competing in her first race.
I was mesmerized at first sight, and I tried it out, I think, the next week. I found out I was really good at BMX, and I wanted to do that until I was really old.
BMX riding runs in the family. Kelly's grandmother was once the top female BMX rider in Canada after winning the title at Expo 86 in Vancouver. Kelly has been racking up medals in Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Alberta. She and her grandpa traveled to Saskatoon to practice at one of the 3 BMX clubs in the province. But the track is outside, so during the winter, they have to drive to a facility in Edmonton to ride.
We have a very short racing season, probably the shortest racing season in the world. In Saskatchewan, we only have 3 tracks to where we can get riders from to race.
Ruda says even though he's paying for his granddaughter to get to the United States and compete, it's her drive and ambition to be #1 that's propelling her forward.
I think it's endless. I think the sky's the limit. I think she has what it takes to get to the top of this sport.
Kelly's goals in the sport are as clear as her talent on the track.
I hope to get first in the world and represent Saskatchewan and our country.
The competition takes place in May. Kelly is the youngest of 6 Saskatchewan kids taking part. And on top of winning, she says she hopes to show others how cool and fun the sport can be. Aishwarya Duda, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Isn't it awesome that they've got that passion? And it'll keep her fit too, all that bike riding, right?
At 9 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us tonight.
And we'll see you at 11.
Bye.